Magic in the morning with 5 seconds of summer, and now it's autumn.
That's actually how the season goes here in Vermont. 5 seconds of summer. Hope you enjoyed it.
I couldn't resist it. Mike Barrett in for a weekly Good Policies chat. How you doing?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great because I don't know what you think about this, but I mean, with the East Branch of the Passumpsic River in my backyard and spring melt going on, I am so happy to not see things flooding.
Yeah, we are very fortunate right now. And even with the rain coming, I mean, Mark said we could see a quarter of an inch or so. I mean, we're not talking any significant flood waters, which is refreshing, to say the least.
No pun.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and of course he's tracking the river gauges and stuff like that, so no threat even as far down as Passumpsic, where it tends to be high.
Yeah.
All right, so we're talking about a transition of seasons. You and I just were here for a couple of seconds over a sip or two of coffee here, and one of our ongoing advertisers all around power led me to a suggestion for our chat today, and we've talked about this many times.
Mm-hmm.
Sport utility vehicles,
Yeah.
and I'm not talking like a car. I'm
Right.
talking like, side-by-sides. Four-seater side-by-sides, $25,000, $30,000 rigs.
Yeah, these things are crazy.
Four-wheelers, dirt bikes, all of these things. A lot of folks that don't run them year-round are taking them out. You want to start off with this?
Yeah, I mean, this is the time of year where somebody may be so motivated, especially with the deals going on, to go out and pick up an ATV or a motorcycle or a dirt bike or something along those lines. There are many options when it comes to recreational vehicles. And for that particular insurance, we call that special lines insurance, right? Because it's kind of unique, right? So it's a policy that you write for a motorcycle. It's a policy that you write for an ATV. There's many companies that play in that realm. And one of the things that I really try to encourage people to do is get the whole picture. Because back when I first started working in the industry, it was very, very common for people to get an ATV or a snowmobile, not a motorcycle, but an ATV or a snowmobile, and they'd add it to their homeowner policy because some of the homeowner policy companies allowed you to have coverage for physical damage for these units and would offer the liability from the policy, but it would fall pretty darn short of real ultimate protection, especially in today's world. So you wouldn't get uninsured motorist coverage, you wouldn't get medical payments coverage. So the best way to handle these units is to get a special lines policy specific for an ATV. And what I love is, especially over the past couple of years, many of those companies have said, look, if you have an ATV, a snowmobile, a motorcycle, or even a tractor, we'll put them all in one policy for you. So you're getting all the bells and whistles. It's going to look very similar to an auto insurance policy. We're going to have bodily injury liability limits, property damage liability limits, medical payments for yourself if you sustain injury on the unit. It's also going to have uninsured motorists for both bodily injury and property damage. You can choose comprehensive. You can choose collision. I got some companies that will cover submersion. Maybe you decided to go snowmobiling on the ice a little too early or a little too late in the season. There's a company that would offer coverage to help pay the cost of getting that sled out.
I'm wondering if one of our GMB employees, Becky, is listening to this because she and her husband had an incident with their four-wheeler. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Okay. Well, now I'm dying to know. So,
no.
yeah.
Well, it got wet. Let's leave it that way.
Okay. All right.
So I have a question for you. We don't see a lot of these around here, but I know that they were popular, really popular when they came out. And I just don't see the common sense to them. But those things like slingshots, you know what I'm talking about? Like the Polaris thing with the two wheels in the front, the one wheel in the back?
Yes, that's going to fall really in the motorcycle category. So that's going to be something that you would be able to put on a motorcycle policy with companies like Progressive or Dairyland or Safeco, American Modern, and Foremost. There's plenty of them that will do that. There's even some companies now that will allow us to put them on a regular auto policy. Very few. Not a lot of players in that world, but if you're with a company and you're checking options and your agent might, don't be surprised if your agent goes, oh, we can just put this on your auto policy because there are some companies that do that. And there's really no reason not to because the rate is the rate is the rate. So for convenience, I wish more companies would consider doing that.
When we were talking about the side-by-sides and other ATV vehicles like that, reference some of the news stories we've had in the last couple of weeks here. You mentioned medical coverage. There have been some significant incidents, and unfortunately, some of them have had the ultimate bad result.
Yeah.
But a lot of folks have been injured in them. I never realized, and maybe some of our listeners didn't either, they didn't realize that when you put coverage on a side-by-side or something of that nature that you'd get that.
Yeah, it has optional coverage. So there are people that when they select the policy, now when we're selling it, we're always pushing really hard for that because I have seen a case where, and I know many cases where it's beneficial that it wasn't there. So it's really a limit that you choose. So, hey, do you want medical payments coverage? You can do 1,000, you can do 2,500, you can do 5,000, 10,000, 25,000. Some companies go to $100,000 coverage. What is medical payments coverage? Just use a motorcycle. And then I'll use an ATV or snowmobile too. But a motorcycle, you're going down the road and your option is to run over somebody or something or put the bike down to avoid the accident and just only hurt yourself. If most people are going to probably put the bike down, especially if it's a child, right? Or Bambi, so to speak. So what's going to happen there? Well, you've now sustained an injury that is not the result of anybody else's negligence nor your own. And without medical payments coverage, you have no coverage, no first dollar coverage for the injuries you've sustained. Now, the same could hold true if you ran into a deer or if you did run into somebody. The injuries you sustain are not going to be covered by your policy. You have to actually be hit by somebody else who is at fault to have coverage for that if you do not choose medical payments. Same if you're in the woods and you hit a tree or a stone or a stump with an ATV or snowmobile. You know, any injury sustained on these units, if you don't have medical payments coverage, it's pretty crucial. And I'll say, Jeff, medical payments, there's two types. There's on a property policy, so like a homeowner or a business owner's policy. Those medical payments are to protect you as the property owner if somebody sustains an injury on your property. But then when we go to special lines and auto, the medical payments on that specifically for you and occupants of your vehicle.
All right, we don't have time to drag this one out here, but I'm going to
I can do it. Let's go.
Well, no, what I'm about to say, this leads to an interesting, I think, coverage line. I have a lot of friends, and maybe you know some too. They like to get their youngsters involved in, say, motocross racing, or I've seen snowmobile racing and three-wheeler racing and stuff like that. I mean, we could go more into detail on this at a later date, but what's your advice in those circumstances?
Don't do it. No. So there's really not going to be any coverage in the regular marketplace that would provide any coverage for bodily injury or for that matter, property damage. I will say companies like Haggerty, who we represent, will insure a race car when it's not in use. Because when it's not in use, it's in pristine condition. You've put all the body work into it. Your sponsor's on it. There's value there. So if it burnt up in the garage or got wrecked in an accident with towing the trailer, whether it be an enclosed or an open trailer, theft or vandalism, those are things that could be covered. But once that thing is in action, coverage comes off. Well,
it was kind of a no-brainer, but I thought it was best to ask because, like a wise man once told me, the stupidest question... It's the one you don't ask.
I think you and I talked to the same guy.
Yeah. All right. Tell them how to get their questions answered.
Yeah, feel free to give us a call. Barrett Insurance Agency in St. Johnsbury, 748-5224. Find our office on Portland Street in St. J. Online, thebarrettagency.com. Google, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Just look for Barrett Insurance Agency. And we still have the Safeco Liberty Mutual Make More Happen voting going. We've made the cut in our vote count, but we still encourage people to check it out. That means that NEK Can is going to get $10,000 in the next week or two.
Love that update. All right. We'll see you in a week's time. Keep your umbrella handy, okay?
Always.
All right. Good policies. Magic in the morning at 8:35's Hometown Minute coming up with Magic.